Greetings, everyone. This is Jed Shlackman. I'm a holistic counselor and spiritual energy healer. Over the years, I've done a lot of exploration and study in the area of holistic health and holistic medicine. So in this video, I'll be speaking about holistic health and what I'm referring to as inconvenient truths about infectious illness. And these are things that are inconvenient to the dominant medical paradigm, to the pharmaceutical industry and the conventional Western medicine approach to treating infectious illnesses. So there's really different layers and aspects to this topic or subject matter. Some of it has to do with more of a physical or biochemical level. Some of it has more to do with an energetic or consciousness level. And so I may be kind of scattered or out of sequence in a sense at times as I share on this topic. So bear with me as I attempt to present these significant or relevant issues which are often misunderstood or ignored in the way people conventionally look at infectious illness. One thing that people tend to ignore in terms of medical treatment is the role of nutrition, of our diet and nutritional status, and how that affects our susceptibility to these illnesses and our ability to overcome and recover from them quickly. Our diet can, in one sense, create susceptibility by causing a buildup of toxic debris in our body. So if we're eating a lot of so-called junk foods or a lot of heavy foods, if we're putting too much stress on the different organs and systems in our body as a result of what we're eating, then various compounds and elements will start to build up in our body that create kind of a toxic debris or toxic film in our body. And over time, that is naturally going to make us more susceptible to various forms of illnesses. It also will tend to create congestion in our body, both congestion of the blood flow of the circulatory system, as well as congestion of the lymphatic system and congestion of things like your sinuses, creating mucus in different areas of the body. So that congestion in the body, in a way, will occupy your immune system. So your immune system will be busy trying to deal with addressing that buildup of foreign matter in your body. So you might have some inflammatory conditions or illnesses. And that congestion also interferes with the body's ability to deal with any infectious organisms that might be starting to accumulate in your body. So it can impair the distribution of oxygen through your body and the delivery of different nutrients to the cells in your body. So if things are congested, then it's hard to get the nourishment to the cells as efficiently as it otherwise would be able to flow, in a sense. So that's part of what happens when we're consuming too much heavy foods, too much processed foods, when we're exposed to too many drugs or medications that may have a toxic impact on the body, as well as other environmental toxins. So all of those factors create some form of congestion in our body and can occupy the immune system, therefore making it more of a challenge for the immune system to bring its attention to microorganisms that are acting as pathogens. And there could be a variety of different types of organisms that are creating that type of pathogenic activity. So it could be bacteria, viruses, mycoplasmas, it could be mold. So there's multiple types of foreign organisms in our body that could start to cause problems. Now, with our Western diets and with all those different stresses and factors present, our nutritional status often gets affected in a negative way. So people are commonly deficient in different vitamins and minerals, in essential fatty acids. If you're not eating much raw foods, you're probably deficient in some enzymes. So these are all factors that affect our body's ability to respond to biological stresses. And there's a pretty wide range of data out there, lots of research showing how different nutrients can help prevent infections and how they can actually assist with treating infections, with shortening the length of an illness. Some of these nutrients are minerals, things like magnesium, iodine, zinc, selenium. Even silver could be considered a nutrient. That is one that's especially useful or practical to use for treating infections, since it has antimicrobial properties. Now, another important factor is having an adequate amount of sleep or rest. During sleep and rest states, the body is able to refresh and regenerate itself, to clear out foreign debris and toxins, and to kind of rebuild or regenerate any damaged tissues that it might have. So getting adequate sleep and rest naturally protects us from catching, so to speak, different infectious illnesses. And when you do get sick, your body naturally wants to rest. Your body is showing you that you need to rest in order to recover, to reclaim your energy, and to allow your body the opportunity to remove those foreign organisms. So detoxification is really important for our overall health. And when we catch an infection, often our body is, in a sense, using that infectious process to facilitate a period of rest where the body is clearing out or detoxifying things that have been built up. So it's not unusual for people to actually feel healthier after they've gone through some infectious illness, if they've processed or handled that situation in a wise and holistic manner, if they've allowed their body to rest, if they've done things that help cleanse and purify the body during that time period. Another significant factor with infectious illnesses and with how the immune system functions is vitamin D, the so-called sunlight vitamin, which in a sense is actually a hormone. It's something that the body itself produces, which helps influence a variety of processes in our body. So when our skin is exposed to the sunlight, we naturally produce our own vitamin D. However, there are many factors that limit people's exposure to the sun. So it could be having dark skin pigmentation, it could be the region of the world where you live, or the season that you're in at the moment. And of course your lifestyle, if you spend a lot of time indoors and not much time outdoors, those can all affect your sun exposure and consequently the levels of vitamin D that are present in your body. So there are some foods that have some vitamin D in them, and there are various supplements available that can help boost your vitamin D levels. So it's important to ensure you're getting enough vitamin D, since vitamin D really helps balance the immune system. And by balancing, that means it helps it not overreact to some things, and it also helps it respond properly to things that you're exposed to. So having enough vitamin D often helps people with autoimmune types of illnesses where their body seems to be chronically inflamed and chronically overreacting, in a sense, to whatever might be present. And it also helps the body handle acute infections so that you can properly address those particular organisms that are affecting your body. Our body has both innate and adaptive types of immunity, different subsystems or pathways that the immune system needs to apply in order to maintain a healthy balance in our body. So sometimes our body is pushed too much in one direction or another. There are a lot of people that have done studies and research in the area of vaccinations and have concluded that vaccines will start to overstimulate one subsystem of immune functioning and could end up suppressing another subsystem, so that our body's overall response to infectious agents could end up being imbalanced. Now, another critical factor in terms of our immune health is oxygen. We know that oxygen is in the air that we breathe, and sometimes there's not enough oxygen. There could be a lot of pollution in the air, so that pushes down the oxygen levels and it increases our exposure to harmful compounds or elements in the air. So the air that we breathe could have a significant effect on our immune functioning and our vulnerability to catching illnesses. It's well known that there's a strong correlation between things like air pollution, things like cigarette smoking, and people's vulnerability to respiratory infections. So we need to keep that in mind if we want to prevent infections, and if we have them, if we want to recover. Different forms of oxygen therapy have been used throughout history to help people recover from illnesses. People that get to spend more time outdoors where there's a better oxygen content in the air and less pollutants often find that they recover quicker. Now, oxygen in the body functions as what's called an oxidant. So, from an electrical perspective, it has a reactive nature where when it encounters a charged compound that's a pollutant or a pathogen, it can react with that particular compound or organism to start to break it down and eliminate it. So oxygen has that effect that's used in a beneficial way in the body to protect us from infectious organisms. However, when that process occurs, it creates what are called free radicals, which are reactive compounds that can actually damage cells and tissues in our body if we don't have something available to neutralize them. So the debris that's left over from breaking down pathogens can actually cause harm in our body if we don't have antioxidants. Antioxidants are compounds that actually help neutralize the free radicals and protect us from any damage. And some common antioxidants are vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin A, and vitamin E. So we need a healthy supply of these antioxidants especially when we're under stress and when we're exposed to some type of illness or process involving pathogens. So we need them to clean up the debris in that sense. And if we don't have enough of them, then sometimes that causes our immune system to go into sort of a overreactive or panic type mode to try to address those free radicals and the debris that's been built up in our body. And that could create a lot of mucus and congestion. It can cause high fevers. So when the body gets overstressed and the immune system has to carry out some type of extreme measures to react to that situation, it can create some negative side effects in a sense, or long-term results that are often what lead to the complications that people hear about with these illnesses. And in some cases, those complications end up in something like oxygen deprivation and organ failure. So in those cases, people can end up dying from pneumonia or some severe acute respiratory response, or some type of organ failure, which is kind of the end stage of this negative chain reaction or downward spiral that occurs with their health. So ideally you want to intervene in positive ways early on to help support a balanced immune response so that those complications don't arise. Now this brings me to the issue of psychological stress and how our thoughts and emotions affect our energy system, which consequently affects what's happening in our physical body. With virtually any type of illness, you'll find some evidence and research that stress plays a role in it. Now, whether we're looking at things starting out from a non-physical or metaphysical level and seeing which comes first, does the stress in the consciousness and in the energy field precede the appearance of things that are happening on a physical level, such as microbes becoming active, such as toxins accumulating and building up in the body, and so on? That's a difficult question or issue to actually measure or examine. My own perspective is that when the energy field that's actually bringing life and vitality to your body gets disturbed or disrupted, then the conditions in the physical body will start to shift. And actually, our body itself is composed to a great extent of microbes, of bacteria and viruses, so they naturally exist in some type of homeostasis or balance where they're not part of a process of illness that's apparent. But when the stresses occur, when something gets disrupted with our energy system, or we may even have some type of physical injury to the body, then those microbes start to become active, and it can appear now that you have some type of infectious illness. But it's important to understand the overall context of everything that's occurring to see the whole holistic system, rather than just assuming some type of direct causal correlation between the activity of the microorganisms and the symptoms of any particular illness. There really isn't a one-to-one correlation there. There isn't just a simple linear connection between those things that are observed. So, looking at different systems of holistic medicine and mind-body medicine, you'll see that particular emotional and mental patterns are correlated with particular physical diseases and illnesses. So when something happens in our consciousness, it's kind of archetypally reflected in some particular part or functioning system of our body. So our body has organs and systems and functions which represent particular meanings to our consciousness. And when there's a disruption or stress in the consciousness, the corresponding area of our body will likely be affected. So we have all these different microbes, these different viruses and bacteria that are within our bodies all the time and in our environments all the time, and most of the time they don't appear to be creating illness. But when these stresses occur, then a particular part of our body, a particular system of our body might start to show an illness, and we may see the activity of those microorganisms elevated. So that's a way to understand what's happening, that what's going on physically is connected to what's occurring in our consciousness, and our consciousness can be the deciding factor. So just because people are exposed to some particular microbe doesn't mean it's ever going to create illness in that particular person. In fact, if you look at all the data that's out there about people testing positive to exposure to various infectious organisms, you'll see that the majority of people who have been exposed actually don't show any sign of illness, and likely won't show any sign of illness in the future, unless at some point in the future the corresponding psychological stress occurs that then triggers the activity of that type of pathogen to create the condition of illness. So this is a rather lengthy and complex topic to discuss, but I encourage everyone to begin looking at these things more from this holistic, systems-oriented perspective, and not to be in fear of pathogens. We can take some reasonable precautions to reduce our exposure to them, but they are ultimately all around us all the time, and we can't live our lives obsessively seeking to avoid contact with these different microbes. And in fact, many of these microbes are actually serving some beneficial purpose in our body, in our microbiome, in our virome, which is kind of this ecological system that exists within us or with us, where we coexist with these different microorganisms to serve the evolution of biological life. Something you could also consider, if you were to get some fresh fruit or some fresh produce, when you initially get it, it looks very nice and pure and healthy and vibrant, and it's full of water, of hydration, so in a sense, to some degree, it's still alive. It has the water and the life force in it, or in a sense around it. There's a field of energy which surrounds that food item, that plant or fruit or whatever it might be. But then over time, the vitality of that starts to diminish. It starts to dehydrate. It starts to lose its life force ultimately. And nature has a process by which anything that starts to lose its life force energy will break down. It will decompose so it can be recycled into the earth, into the process of life. So at some point you'll see some type of bacterial or mold type process starts to occur. It starts to rot, and you see the bacteria and the mold take their effect as that particular fruit breaks down. So we need to understand that when that item there was looking healthy and vibrant, the seeds, you could say, or the potential for those breakdown processes were already there. So those particular microbes that create that process were in a sense already present. They just weren't active. They weren't stimulated to do their job yet by the environmental condition. But when that environmental condition changed, when that living plant matter started to die, then those microbes took on their role to break things down. So the same thing in a sense happens with our own bodies. When we're healthy and vibrant and feeling happy and enjoying our life and well nourished, getting enough rest and so on, then those microbes that are in our body or around us won't make us sick. They won't create the process that we identify as illness. However, when we get stressed and traumatized, when we are deficient in our nutrition, when we're not getting enough sleep, when we're building up toxins in our body, that's when those microbes start to activate and proliferate and function as what we call pathogens in the process of disease or illness. So we once again need to look at this holistically rather than just assuming that because there's a microbe there, it's going to cause an illness. In the field of biology, there are many people over the years who have looked at the theory of pleomorphism, which is the idea that these different microbes or small microscopic cells or organisms go through a cycle of transformation where they are shifting and changing in response to the environmental conditions. And at some stages they are completely benign, and at other stages they are part of what we perceive as a disease process. So you can research pleomorphism to understand how that works and to see the evidence which supports that. Some of that goes back to the time of Royal Rife, who used a very advanced microscope to watch the live activity of cells in the human body to see what was actually occurring. And he also used frequency or energy type medicine to destroy organisms that were associated with disease or illness. I mentioned the microbiome and the virome. Virome is spelled V-I-R-O-M-E, and you can read up on that as well. And that's the idea that we're composed physically of a community of microbes that are essentially symbiotic organisms. At certain times they can start to appear or function in a parasitic way, where they are contributing to conditions of illness, and they do kind of get out of control as a result of the weaknesses or deficiencies that are present in our body. Now, even in the field of holistic medicine, there are many people who focus a lot on how these different microbes do facilitate or cause illness. So we're not saying that they're not part of the process of illness and that there's not a reason to try to clear them out and eliminate them. But we also want to focus on building up our immune system and cleansing and detoxing our body so that those other organisms, those microbes that could facilitate illness, don't keep coming back. One significant problem or challenge that's occurred with modern medicine is that drugs are often used to just attack or kill the microbes. So you have a lot of antibiotics, antiviral drugs, And when you're using those a lot, you're actually disturbing the natural balance of the microbiome, of the virome, and you're creating an opportunity for more future infections. So we've had the problem of a lot of antibiotic resistant microorganisms developing, since we're just attacking whatever microbes are currently there in the body, but they're going to keep returning in the future if you don't restore this balanced environment or balanced community. So we can actually cause more future problems with the conventional medical approach to addressing these issues. And if we want to create long-term health and well-being, our ideal should be to create balance and harmony within our being, which involves our nutrition and our lifestyle, our relationship with our environment, having a healthy environment, both physically and socially. So addressing issues on a social and psychological level, building healthier families and communities, healthier economic models, helping people live their lives with less stress and less trauma. So all of these are really significant factors to recovering from illness and promoting long-term health. So I hope that this discussion has given each of you some insight into what these inconvenient truths are. They may seem inconvenient because they require us to really look more thoroughly at ourselves and our lifestyle and how we think about and respond to things. Are we living our lives with fear, with some paranoia about what's happening in the world around us, fear of these microbes that are actually always around us and in some sense essential to the circle of life? So we don't want to get caught up in this pattern of fear and of isolation and separation. We want to look more toward unity and holism, toward creating harmony between ourselves and others. Ultimately, we are all part of one infinite consciousness, and with that awareness, we can be reminded that some of what's occurring with infectious illness is not a matter of physical transmission, but actually involves some type of quantum field effect. Many people have spoken of herd immunity recently, and the idea of herd immunity is that after a certain percentage of a population have been exposed to a particular infectious agent and are showing that they have an antibody response to that, then suddenly the population as a whole, even those who were not physically exposed, seem to show that they've developed immunity. So there is definitely some type of an energetic field effect there, some type of non-local connection or consciousness that's carrying that immunity through the population. And if we consider that reality, we also need to really open up to considering the reality, or potential at least, that the illness itself can be transmitted or received or tuned into in that non-physical manner. So there's herd immunity, but there could also be herd susceptibility, where once some type of bacteria or virus gets developed within a species, and a certain number or percent of individuals in that species have exhibited that particular type of organism and perhaps an illness associated with it, then the rest of the population can start to tune in to receive or activate that within themselves without even having any physical contact or physical level exposure to that microorganism. If you look at the patterns of how disease epidemics appear to spread, you could consider this hypothesis that it's not happening only by the physical contact or transmission, that it's also happening through some field of consciousness where the different individuals are in some way activating that information pattern associated with a virus or bacteria, and whatever microbes are pre-existing or already present in their body can start to mutate or transform to become the form, that particular pattern that's been activated now with other individuals within the collective. So this is something that I believe needs to be considered and recognized as a very real and significant possibility, and which would make us have to pause and question all the different policies that are enacted to attempt to halt the spread of illnesses, when it could be the reality that we really can't do things at a physical level that could guarantee the prevention of the spread of an illness. The holistic view would lead us to consider that potential. So I know that some of these ideas or some of this information may challenge what a lot of people have been taught or led to believe, but if you start to look at the science, you'll see that there's really a lot of information that leads in these directions and supports all the different topics and ideas that I've shared here. My goal is to help support your health and wellness on all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I see and perceive us all as spiritual beings ultimately here having a human experience. So our spiritual essence, our spiritual identity is not limited to this physical body. No matter what occurs, our consciousness will always continue to exist. So in that context, there really is no such thing as death, even though many of us go through our lives fearing death. And with that fear of death, we often restrict or constrict our experience of life. So because we're afraid of dying, we're not even fully living. So let's pause and consider that we need to really accept that death on a physical level is a reality, even though spiritually we can be immortal beings. And with that awareness, we can live our life more fully and fearlessly. I want to thank each of you for taking your time to view this video. I would like to remind everyone that the content of my videos is for educational purposes, and it's not intended to replace any treatment or diagnosis by healthcare professionals. If you have any health concerns, you are encouraged to consult with any qualified and trusted healthcare professionals that you may wish to work with. For those that are looking for additional educational information about holistic health and spirituality, I invite you to view my website, which is phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I'd like to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.